support of the Rohingya and what's going on with that. And I just want to know what you have to say about that.
It's an open question to anyone who wants to take that up. Probably a politically sensitive one, but...
I'll take a stab at it, and don't throw rocks at me. I think that's a real excellent question. I think the part of the challenge, I think, is to understand or try to look at the situation from the Western point of view is going to be limited in scope and the way that is interpreted. And we just kind of talked about how the Burma as a nation is very, very complex, both in terms of the politics, certainly, but in terms of ethnic groups, the language, the culture, and the history that all intertwines in different manners. So we're not just talking about the issue about ethnic groups per se, and there are much more complexities and the cobwebs that are not necessarily easy to kind of tease things apart. Personally, I think it's anyone's challenge. If you were to think about a birth of a nation and trying to sort of wield unruly divisions that happen in any nation, including the United States, you can kind of begin to understand how enormous challenge that may have been. So that's where I come from, that obviously Aung San Suu Kyi is as a great leader, and we have known that to be the case for years on end. But she's only a person. She can, to a certain degree, wield power in her nation, but not to the point where she has absolute power, which is the very thing that we don't want, right? So I think we have a lot of patience to give and to support the nation that we're just are being emerged from the dictatorship for decades, and prior to that, the colonization by the British, to give a time to heal first, and then have a chance to create a nation that is meaningful to them in their own right. So I think that's, I guess, the best answer that I can give you.
Thank you, Isaac. Leon, would you want to add anything to that?
Yes. This is a very hard question to give an answer. And it's hard for, I think, for Aung San Suu Kyi herself, very hard question to answer. She needs to think about her people. When we talk about Burma or Burmese and Myanmar, we have different ethnic groups, and Burmese is majority group, and under it we have minorities, religious minorities, and ethnic minorities. So if the government do not recognize these Rohingya people as their citizen, and even the one as a citizen and a founder of the country ourselves from a minority group, so we suffered many, many things under the dictatorship. So if the one who are indigenous legally suffered very much, then you can imagine how much these people, this Rohingya group, will suffer under the military. So, yeah, this is how we have the background and the issues in the local, in the country. So, Aung San Suu Kyi herself never used the word Rohingya. I think she is afraid of using it because she think about majority Burmese group, because this Burmese group think even my people from the hill areas think that these Rohingya are illegal. So that's the problem.
So trying to bridge a lot of these conflicts and divides in Burma may be more than you could ask one person to do. That seems to be what I'm hearing. That perhaps Aung San Suu Kyi is working in the background, but she can't for any number of reasons that any one of us who are politically astute could understand, that she cannot take an explicit stand on some issues. Is that a fair assessment?
Can I explain that?
Yes, Steve.
Yes, because the gentleman asked regarding about, especially regarding about Aung San Suu Kyi. Okay, so I would like to share a little experience about me. I'm in the politics in Burma, and also what politics is a National League for Democracy. I'm the deputy in charge for my division. We have 7 states and 7 divisions. It's the same. The states are in the same like division. So the whole country. So I'm the deputy in charge, one of them. So then we do have 1990 general election. It's a military government. They said that after general election, who they win, we transfer the power. But we win 82%, more than 82% with the alliance, but they are not transfer power. They arrest all 11%, including party leader, including me. I get a free way to borderline in fighting back to the government, military government. So it's called ABSD, All Burma Street Democratic Front. I'm the deputy commander. I'm major position in fighting with the government before I came to the United States.
Right.
So that's a little background. Aung San Suu Kyi just get it. You have to look at and think about what is going on inside Burma and how long, how many decades. It's many decades. We all are already mentioned that. It started happening in 1962 until now. It is no elect of the government, no democracy, only military dictatorship. So the Aung San Suu Kyi getting power just a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, right? Then the main problem is why she cannot do it, why she's quiet, why she didn't say anything. It's Nobel Peace Prize winner. Why? You have to think about, you have to look at, for example, like in your household, what is number one priority? What the number one need in your household? Then you have to think about, you have to do about with your neighbor or whatever. It's the same thing. So many years, about 60 years, they changing my brainwash, everything's many problems. She had to take care of that. That's one part. Another one part is what the Constitution right now. It's 2008 Constitution. It is ruled by the military government. It says that 25% automatically sitting in the parliament. Military commander-in-chief can appoint it anytime, anywhere. All U.S. government, all branch, all ministry, and also the military commander can appoint it. It is by constitution, the current constitution, by president, the military commander can appoint it. Whole affair, commander-in-chief, the police, whole affair. Everyone is a ministry or border, everyone they can appoint it. So where is the real power? And also, when you elect in the parliament, in the upper parliament and lower parliament, easy to say that, you have to pass 75%. So 25% is all military, only followed by the command, yes or no only. So that's one thing. So how
Stephen,
you see that, right?
I want to move on to other topics.
Yes,
but
so that's one thing. And also the Rohingya. So like Iso mentioned earlier that, yes, we do have challenges in fighting with a lot in the government and system, conflict with the ethnic people, even it's Burmese people. I mean the Burmese too.
Right.
But they killing us, they fighting with us. Even, arrest with my father is arrest my cousin, arrest all my friends is arrest. I just ran it away. They just trade that. Okay, if your dad went to free, your son has to be coming and surround. Then we were free for that. That's a very simple. So
okay,
that
Stephen, I do need to move on.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say that perhaps the perspective that we receive in the West is channeled In other words, it doesn't, it perhaps does not really reflect the complexities that Isak mentioned that are on the ground, that sometimes, you know, we respond with astonishment that something is not done quickly and to address what we regard as a humanitarian outrage. But perhaps one of the things we're learning tonight is that if we want to truly understand the depth and complexities of an issue such as the Rohingya and Aung San Suu Kyi's role in that or not, that we have to dig a little deeper ourselves in order to understand the situation. I want to move on now, though, from that broad background about the situation in Myanmar to talk more directly about the experience of refugees and immigrants here in the United States. And my first question is, in Buffalo and in Atlanta, where Leon is currently studying and ministering to a Burmese congregation, can you first give us an idea of the first reaction of refugees when they arrive in the United States? You know, that first, maybe you call it the shock of arrival. What do refugees and immigrants from Burma experience in their first few days, weeks in the United States? Just to give us a human eye view of that. And that is open to anyone. And anyone can respond to that.
My experience here is only 2 years now, so I do not know very well about this experience, but so far as I know, they struggle with, their children going to school and the father going to work and mother busy at home looking after the whole family, and at the same time learning English speaking. So language studying and learning language is the struggle that they have in their first life here in America. And the next, how to drive and how to become a citizen, how to get that's how they have been struggling, and until today, many of my church members have been struggling with such kind of things. And the currently, the prayer requests from many of my church members is that they are afraid that they cannot become citizen. So, and they really want to drive cars. Many of them cannot drive yet, especially mothers. And I think this is how they are struggling.
Adela and Matt, since you represent a supporting agency, especially in those initial weeks and months of arrival, what would you add to what Leon has characterized as sort of first reactions, practical adaptation issues?
As a resettlement agency in Buffalo, Journey's End is one of 4 resettlement agencies. It's ourselves, Jewish Family Services, Catholic Charities, and the International Institute. It's our mission statement to basically help with the first 90 days of transition into U.S. society. Folks from our agency meet the refugees at the airport, bring them to an apartment that they've already set up for them with the basic necessities that they need to start off their life in the U.S. We have English as second language classes that we offer at both the basic and intermediate levels. We do job placement help. But again, 90 days isn't a whole lot of time when you really think about starting over in an entirely new culture. So we do strive to do our best as far as providing support beyond the 90 days. I think, just the culture shock, I think is just pretty apparent for anybody when you think about you're someone who was fleeing persecution in your home country, you probably spent at least a minimum of 2 years in a refugee camp while your refugee application was being processed and you were being vetted. 2 years is pretty much the average minimum. It could have been many, many years in a refugee camp where usually there's not a lot in terms of education opportunities for children. So then to go to that and then kind of be plopped down in the United States of America in a whole new language and new culture to learn, it's just really amazing the strength of the refugees when you meet these folks about their adaptability to persevere.
Adela, anything?
I think Matt said it, the way that Matt said it was great. It's definitely a culture shock when they first arrive. You want to sort of teach sort of an orientation of what their rights that they have that are here that were otherwise unavailable, like in their countries of persecution. So it's just teaching them the rights that they have and what forward-looking, getting their green card, getting their citizenship, applying for family members in a way that is just very welcoming.
How about the reaction to Buffalo winters? It leads me to a question I'd like to direct at Isak. And again, others may comment on this, but I know that Isak has a long interest in mental health adaptations. And Isak, I wonder if you could say, especially when you interview and work with recent refugees, are they in specified ways or recognizable ways suffering from mental health issues?
That's a very good question. So I'm assuming I've realized that we haven't really cleared the distinction between the immigrants and the refugees, and so I'm going to assume that you know the difference to begin with. So we know that for anyone who is moving from one country or one place to another, that requires some sort of adjustments. In the case of immigrants and refugees, they're really transporting themselves from one country, usually far out in East Asia or Africa or European Unions, to United States. And as you know, the United States is sort of the nation of immigrants, and I don't care what background you have, your ancestors had to, in some ways, acclimate to the different kinds of transitions that they had to make, including the language. So in doing so, it requires knowledge of that you are actually moving, right? And then you know where you're going. None of these two are the case for the refugees, so they don't know where they're going. They kind of know that maybe in 3-4 days in advance that they are told that where you're going, in most cases, United States, and in what place in the United States, what places, what city in the United States, they don't necessarily know until the last minute. So city of Buffalo, while we know great things about Buffalo, including the snow, they don't know anything about it. So you can imagine sort of the shock that comes with, obviously, the cold, and most of these people are from the temperate tropical areas, and they immediately kind of hunker down and try to sort of, quote unquote, survive for the first 90 days, certainly, and trying to figure out what to do next. And the challenge is really then what? And a lot of the refugees that come don't necessarily share some of the mental health symptoms that we are familiar with. So the traumas and the depression, anxiety, and the extreme fear of some authority figures and the police and all of those things. It's not necessarily going to impact them right away, Once they acclimate to the surroundings, and when the guards are a little off, that's when things gonna get escalate in terms of their fears and the problems that relates to psychological distress. So,
Thank you. Stephen, if I can, again, just continue on this thread. As the leader of the Burmese Community Services, and you've heard the other panelists talk about various adaptation issues, but Leon mentioned in particular, it quickly comes to the forefront of refugees or immigrants' minds about citizenship. And would you describe that as a principal concern of the people in your community that you are serving?
Okay, thank you for asking me. I'm happy to answer that. I would like to go back your first question for everyone. What the challenging in first arriving to the U.S. or Buffalo, whatever. Number one, language issue. Number two, culture shock. Number three, lack of knowledge. Even we had the great resettlement agency, 4 agencies in the city of Buffalo. They do very great for first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because they just follow by the federal guideline. Even they went to help, they cannot continue for that because of the guideline. So, however you had to give in presentation, giving information them, they are not putting in the mind because lack of knowledge, the culture shock, they are worried a lot because, like Isho said, because country to country, language is different. So they cannot memorize, they cannot remember everything. So that's a number one issue. And also weather is big challenging for them. So it's very hot, warmer area in the Southeast Asia, but here is winter time. So that's a number one, the challenges too. So your last question, citizenship. It's not a lot, but some of them, they stay concerned about citizenship for the green card, because the green card, no one's worried for them. No one at all, refugee. I'm talking about refugee people, because they are legally arriving to the United States. It's all background check, everything, all process, security, they all pass. They automatically get it after 1 year. Not automatically get it. They had to apply it after 1 year. They can get it. Then citizenship. After 5 years you arrive as a refugee, then you can apply citizenship. So you can get it. You don't have to worry anything. But one thing, when take the citizenship test, you have to answer, you have to pass for that. Because most of them, they have no education background. So that's what challenging for them, some of them, but it's not a lot. So,
thank you.
Because also a refugee, I'm a refugee myself, and also I'm dealing with every day with refugee.
Right.
So every day antenna. So
one thing we may all be wondering about is in the Burmese communities, whether it's in Atlanta or Buffalo or some other city in the United States, do the ethnic divisions prevail even in the resettlement communities? Or is part of the process of assimilation that those barriers between ethnic groups gradually erode? I'd just be interested if there's an answer to that question.
me or
It's an open question. What you have observed.
Okay, my experience here in America is, as I said, 2 years only. Yeah, now this is my 3rd year, but I think that the problems we had in Myanmar comes to America also. So Stephen is from majority Burmese group, Burmese speaking, maybe Buddhist, but for many of us, we are not Buddhist, we are not Burmese, we are not identified as Burmese. So that kind of a difference, and the difference after even they arrive here, they have their own communities in Atlanta. And also I asked Stephen that how many people here, and he said more than 9,000. Meant a lot, many people. But when they have I think they have their own communities. Very hard to communicate. That's the problem. The original the problem also in Myanmar. And here, I think we need to reconcile between this group and that group, and try to help each other, and even think about how we can best help the country back in Myanmar. That's what I really want our people here in America to think and to act for justice and peace. But difference, cultural difference and ethnic difference also affects and impact very much. That's how I think.
Would anyone else like to take up on this?
Yes, I would like
Stephen?
to add a little bit for that. So some of them he mentioned that it is true information because they believe that and they don't want to be identified. I mean the Burmese or whatever, but it's a reality. It's a reality. But and also we recognize that because they just it's not confident by themselves. But we all recognize it's a freedom in especially in the United States, you can identify whatever you would like to, including name, whatever ethnic, it's okay, religion. So, because it's based on what the background in Burma, because many decades is brainwashed by fighting with the military regime, and who's fighting to military regime, especially ethnic group, ethnic armed group, or ethnic have their own armed group. They fighting with the government. So in religion, some leader and also especially ethnic group, because they see that the government is calling Burmese government or Myanmar government, oh, they are our enemies. So that's why people, they don't want to be recognized as the Burmese or whatever. And also those leaders teaching them, pushing them. So those say Burmese. Even you go into court or anywhere here in the United States, in the Buffalo especially. So like I told you, it's about 20 years already as interpreter until now. I have many different jobs, many different experience and title too. So I'm meeting with those people daily, not only Burmese people. So many different ethnic in many different places. I'm interpreter for court, ski, school, anywhere. So those, including interpreter and the leader, they teach them, don't identify yourself as the Burmese speaker. Even they speak very well than me, the sound is very good, and they require that different because those leaders pushing brainwash, and also they need a side door, especially here, so the interpreter. When you go, for example, you go to the DSS office, Department of Social Service, okay, what language do you speak? Maybe Chin, whatever. So Chin have many different ethnic groups, about 53 different separate that. So they cannot communicate each other to same like Burmese people. So that's what they teach them. They'll say those language, this language, not only Burmese, different ethnic too. So why is happening? Because of the background of the political issue in Burma, in conflict area, in the borderline, and also when they came here, so the leader, interpreter, they need their own interest. That's what they teach them. Very simple way, you will be very interested. I'm in the downtown Department of Social Service. I sit in the waiting room. They came for an interview. I sit in behind the interpreter sitting right there. Client sitting there, face to face. The interpreter didn't see me. I'm sitting behind them. The interpreter teaches the client, hey, when you go into meet with social worker, if they ask what language do you speak, you tell them those language. I don't want to say what language. So you mention this language. Even she didn't communicate, she or he didn't communicate with this client, talking with Burmese language. I understand everything.
So sad.
How it's feeling? That's so very simple. I see it there. Oh, brother, you there? Yes, I do. That's so very simple. So that's a very, it's from a background, it's a reality in here. Because of the brainwash, because of their personal interest. Mm-hmm. So they never think about the whole nation, the whole country, the whole population.
Right.
So, that's a challenge.
Okay, thank you. Isak, would you like a quick...
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
Just to tell you from my own data collection, which Stephen helped and alongside with other community members, is that So I work with Karen refugee community, which is the largest single ethnic group resettled here from anywhere. So they're roughly around like 5,500 as of 2016. So I'm assuming that's gotten much bigger by now. The problem of language, I guess, certainly is the issue, and at least from the research that I've did, many of them do speak their own ethnic language, but their proficiency in both writing their own language is an issue, and the communicating in their own ethnic language is obviously the most the comfortable way of communicating, and that kind of makes it easier for them to congregate together. And because of the background that they have gone through, you know, they have a similar experiences and the challenges that they've experienced either in their own village in Burma or throughout their protracted stay in the refugee camp. So I think it's impractical to think that they will be able to come here in the United States and work as a pan-Burmese or Burmese in general. That doesn't necessarily work that way. But they do recognize the need to, at least from my own perspective, they do recognize the need to come together as a group and voice their advocate for their own community. And again, and they've been here maybe 10, 15 years by now. And that's still way too early to think about the future that holds for most of the families and that they have in their community. So,
Well, you just gave me a great segue into our last segment, which is looking to the future. And I wrote down this question because I'm going to ask all of you to gaze into the future. Yes. We're in the midst of a presidential election campaign, which is coinciding with a sharp departure from past practice in the federal government's approach and policies on immigrants and refugees. In light of this, what are your thoughts on the communities you serve and those still aspiring to come to the United States over the next several years? What can you offer a forecast of what current immigration policies are going to have on the communities that you serve day in and day out?
Going wrong? I because the answer is I thought that it's a politics because Democrat government or Republican government, so they may change for that. We cannot control it as a refugee, as a community leader, as a small organization. We are not political party, so we cannot do anything. What we can do is we just happy by our own community, and also we just happy to local government, state government, federal government, as we can. We educate them, we advocate them, we help each other like the BRICS. That's all we can do right now. But the politics or immigration policy, whatever, they will change it someday because nothing is always. They will change all the time.
Right. And Matt and Adela, the impact on the organization that employs you, I'm sure this topic comes up and you have to strategize for the future. Can you give us any insights into that?
I think right now, just given that the cap was set, it's just a matter of, maintaining that support for all of the organizations, maintaining the support for refugee resettlement, continuing to serve our clients, as these challenges come forth to the best that we can.
Mm-hmm. Because I would imagine even if the numbers go down, the needs that you're serving continue, right, and extend into the future.
Yeah. So I mean, as long as we are resettling some folks every year, we're at least able then to maintain kind of the infrastructure that we have in place. So as long as we continue to resettle, even if it's at a more limited number than we're used to, our resettlement department then will at least be able to continue to do their work, and we'll continue to have staff available to be there when, as Stephen said, eventually, this is politics, it's cyclical. The decrease that we're seeing now is most likely we're going to see the converse of that, whether that be in just next year or 5 years from now. So.
Before I pose my last question to the panel, are there any other questions?
It's all right if I make a comment? Sure. Okay. My first comment has got to be that I think Americans as a whole, sorry, I can say this because I'm an American, that we're very arrogant and we think we know more than we do as a general rule. You mentioned several times how complicated the government in Burma is, and it truly is. It's a formidable challenge to be able to bring forward a country that has had so much divisiveness in it. I think Aung San Suu Kyi has an extremely difficult job ahead of her. I would not want to be in her position for anything. And I can understand some of where she's coming from, having been under house arrest, being in the position that she's in now. But from my very, very limited viewpoint, I think she has to begin to look at all the people of the country more as a whole. Patang Lian, my hat's off to you for being a peacemaker.
Yes.
You have an extremely difficult job. And the only way that I can see anything being accomplished is for the people to understand that all the people of a country, this country included, all of our refugees, all of our nationalities, all the people of a country have to be treated with respect. And I'm not trying to disrespect anyone's viewpoint, but if you lived in the Chin Hills, and I know just a tiny bit of the history, if you lived in the Chin Hills, I think it would be perfectly obvious why they're afraid, why they continue to fight. Because if you had lived where there was a strong military and police presence for all those years, and to a certain extent, more or less, persecution, there's going to always be that fear and suspicion until they understand that they are respected also. And I guess that's all I wanted to say. Continue on with trying to bring the people together.
Yeah, I'm totally agree
Thank you.
that. So, and also I believe that it's not only me, many people believe that Aung San Suu Kyi doing her best for the country. So not only for one party, so they do it for all, the whole country. And also we would like to think about challenges and look at like US, United States. They receive coming many different nations, many different beliefs, many different people. So it is a great nation, great country, very successful. This is very simple. So what I would like to do in seeing that all our people are inside country or outside country like the US, in Buffalo, in US, whatever, or especially because we're talking about Burmese population. So all those people think about how it's successful in United States. It is very simple way. They think about changing their mind. So how is powerful for unity? That's a power of unity. Then, we had to learn what happened in the past, how we had to go forward. So that's what I would like to happen in changing all Burmese population, and including all ethnic people. So that's what I want to be happen.
Okay. I'd like to, on the heels of those comments, I'd like to come to the final question, and this is as much a philosophical as a practical question. And I'm going to go around so that everyone gets a chance, if you would respond, concisely. But the question is this: what, in your personal view, does success look like for Burmese refugee, immigrant, asylum seeker communities. And in formulating your response to that, do you think these communities have now a long-term perspective on blending into U.S. society and culture? Or another way of thinking about this, as I was thinking about it earlier today, would success, that word, would success in Burmese communities be defined differently than from past waves of immigrants? The Germans, the Irish, the Italians, Hispanics. Would long-term success of these communities, how would you describe it?
Sure. So if you're using the metric of assimilation as the kind of the line there for success,
if that's correct,
and but then that's even a difficult question, because who gets to judge when someone's been assimilated? Is that the non-native or the native who makes that determination? You know, it's when, to me, a success in America is when you lose that hyphen, you know, and you stop being whatever American and you're just American, right? You know, I've come from Polish descent, so my great-grandparents were Polish Americans, but I do not self-identify as Polish American. I am just an American.
I like it.
So
that's what we need.
Yeah, right. You know, to me, I think it is similar to past, you know, people of European descent or Hispanic descent who have come to the U.S. I think Burmese is going to be the same, where once you get to that second or third generation where they have learned English fluency, or they're now native-born English speakers, I think you'll see them, you know, move on from those kind of concentrated pockets where they are right now on the west side and a little bit on the east side, and they'll move out throughout Western New York, and you know, to me, you know, it's going to be normal, very normal in the next 10 to 20 years for you to just be, you know, your kid's teacher is going to be of Burmese descent. You know, the mayor of Buffalo could be of Burmese descent, and it's going to be success to me.
Steve?
I really like his view. That's why I really want all our people thinking the same way. That's why we can change it. Otherwise, state conference is still going on. Then I just want to be a little bit is receiving humanitarian living standard, especially our refugee and immigrant people received by the U.S. government. So it's very standard. So you have right to travel. You can sponsor your family in your own country or whatever. You can work anywhere you went, except federal job, without citizenship. Then you can get a permanent resident. You can apply for the green card. Then you can apply for the citizenship. That's a final goal. So all refugee and immigrant life is getting better. Because of why? Because of all those standards. There's a basic standard provided by the U.S. government. Where's fraud? All our money is fraud. All U.S. citizen is taxed in this body. Then we have to know that, and we have to recognize that. That's why live it better. And also, same thing. Resettlement agency, same thing. They receive funds from the government, and they support to those people, refugee, immigrant people. They educate them, they share information. Then they teach them. They coordinate with many others. So that's what better life in here. That's what we look forward with. What we would like to do is all our people are changing their mind. In the past, it's already done. The brainwash go away and watch again. It's more clear and face it with new life for better future. So that's what I would like to happen in the city of Buffalo and the whole nation of United States.
Thank you, Stephen. Leon, how would you define success in the 20-year future?
Yes, Stephen, I agree with Matt and Stephen, but you know, I am new here. I'm here with my student visa, so as I think about our people living here, coming here as refugee, and I worry how they define success, how they understand life here in America. So I think many of them, most of them think, okay, I get just my citizen and just become American. I'm American. Then they're very proud of it. That's good thing. But at the same time, I really want them why they are here. And I want them to think back about the country. So much depends on how they understand life, the meaning of life, and what is success in life. So that's what I'm worried. So my message for our people in America is, okay, if you have many push factors that you leave the country, but if you just stay here and feel just okay, enjoy everything, being American, it stops there. I think I want something more beyond it, and do good things and act for the country back home. That's what I expect and I want them.
Thank you. Adela?
Yeah, I think I agree with everybody that's up here. I think the most important thing, in my personal opinion, is doing that culture of us and we, as opposed to us and them. Seeing us as one is the goal, and that's what I think success looks like.
Mm-hmm. Isak, the last word.
I feel like I'm pressured to say something profound, but I think I'm an immigrant myself, and I've lived in the States for decades, and I think every time I think about this question, I have a different answer, at least sort of have to contemplate it, what that means. But to kind of echo what everyone has said, I think it's really for us to give ourselves permission to be who we are, and not to just sort of act or perform the way that the outside pressure allows us to act. And that's somewhat, I guess, complicated, but I think in many ways, immigrants and refugees alike are pressured to perform and act in a certain way that is not necessarily their doing or their preference. So if they are able to freely speak their language, regardless what language they speak in public sphere, we all know that that's not always the case, that people are afraid to speak the language that their mother tongue. Learning to sort of share freely of what we are made of, culturally and otherwise. And since we are in a church, having that spiritual sort of awakening that we are all common people, that despite our differences, we all have a common goal of wanting to be happy and looking for that happiness, however it is defined. So, and having the freedom to define it in their own term, I think that's really important. So.
Thank you, Isak. I think that concludes us on an appropriately lofty note, because we are, as we all know, we are more than material beings. We are spiritual beings as well. And sometimes we know this from our own experience as Americans, that we can be pushed into a template of what someone else defines as success when we within ourselves, do not feel that we are success because we haven't been true to ourselves. So I think this has been a wonderful discussion, and I deeply appreciate the panels, especially the way that they have wrapped this up, but the way they have honestly and candidly addressed some very difficult, fraught questions with no easy answers, but they haven't shied away from them. So I would like you to join me in thanking our panel for their contributions tonight. And I would be remiss if I did not also thank the organizers of not only tonight's event, but the entire Escalate Peace Week, Christina, Mary Kate, Liz, Ellen, and India. I thank them because you cannot imagine the hours that have gone into organizing tonight's event, but beyond that as well, what is happening on both sides of tonight's event. And the last thing I'd like to do is to thank you. The fact that you come out on a cool, somewhat rainy night and to involve yourselves, to extend yourselves beyond perhaps your own personal interest to the questioning and care of communities that sometimes lie beneath our immediate reach. This is, to me, it's a testimony to all of you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. With that, having said that, I think our panelists would be willing to linger for a few minutes here at the front of the church if anyone would like to address them directly or maybe exchange contact information or anything like that. So with that, I bring this to a close and I say this, go in peace.
Fighting with that. We're very good friends.
I can imagine.